You think of the open road as a symbol of freedom, a journey where the car is your sanctuary, a private bubble moving through the world. But have you ever felt that flicker of doubt on a long, dark highway? The unease of a car's headlights that seem to follow you from one exit to the next, or the gut feeling that tells you not to stop at that poorly lit gas station in the middle of nowhere. That's the quiet paranoia of the traveler. The stories you are about to hear are about what happens when that paranoia is justified, and the journey itself becomes the predator. A few years ago, during my college days, I was driving home for winter break. The trip spanned nearly the entire country, meaning several long days of relentless driving. As a broke student, hotels were not an option. I threw some blankets in my back seat, planning to sleep wherever I could when exhaustion hit. At around 1 a.m., after 11 straight hours behind the wheel, I knew I had to stop. I was getting dangerously drowsy. I pulled into the next rest stop I found. It was a small turnout on the highway's edge, with a small building for washrooms and vending machines. One other car was parked in the farthest spot, so I took the opposite one for privacy. I got out to stretch and use the restroom. It wasn't clean, but I took care of my business and headed back to my car. As I approached, I saw a man standing right by my window, peering inside. "Can I help you?" I asked. My voice startled him. He took a nervous step back and chuckled, claiming he was checking if I was inside to ask for some cash for the machine. My car has untinted windows. You could easily see if it was occupied. There was no need to be pressed against the glass. "Sorry, man, I don't have any cash," I said, moving around him to get into my car, but he didn't leave. He tried to start another conversation, asking where I was headed. "Look, I'm on a road trip. I'm sorry, but I really need to sleep." I got in my car, and the man gave a half-hearted wave before walking to the other vehicle and getting in. I was slightly relieved he belonged to the car. I think I was too tired to feel truly uncomfortable. In a normal state of mind, I would have left for the next stop. I cleared my front seat, leaned it back as far as it would go, and tried to get comfortable. I'd only had my eyes closed for a few minutes when I noticed lights moving outside. I sat up and saw in my mirror that the man had moved his car directly behind mine. I watched, confused. As things got creepier, I knew I had to find somewhere else to sleep. I put my seat up, started the car, and merged back onto the highway, muttering some choice words about the guy. This stretch of road had few exits, so this detour would cost me 30 or 40 minutes of driving while dangerously fatigued. My eyelids kept drooping shut for a second or two before I'd jerk awake. Finally, I reached the next rest stop, or what was left of it. It was clearly abandoned. The building was boarded up, decaying, and covered in graffiti. Still, it was a place off the road, and I figured I'd be left alone here. I'm not sure if it was the quiet or my exhaustion, but I fell asleep almost instantly. I got some decent sleep, I think, from about 2 a.m. until 4 a.m., when I was woken violently by a loud crash against my car. The entire vehicle shook. I scrambled to understand what happened. In my left mirror, I saw a car's headlights parked behind me. I looked at the right mirror and saw a man next to my car holding a metal baseball bat. He swung it again, and my back window exploded. "What the fuck?" I yelled over and over, fumbling for my keys. The man came to the passenger window, and I saw it was the guy from the last rest stop. He wore a sinister smile and began taunting me, just repeating the word "liar" as he swung the bat against my car. I didn't know what he meant, but I got the car started and sped away before it got worse. I called 911, my hand shaking as I drove. I met an officer at a gas station and explained what happened. The damage was extensive. 2 shattered windows, dents all over the doors, and a slashed rear tire that was nearly flat. Another officer checked the abandoned rest stop and found the glass, but the man was gone. They put out a notice for him and his vehicle, but never found him. After a few days stuck in a small town for repairs, I made it home. It's insane how some people can just snap. I assume he lost it over me not having a few bucks, or not wanting to talk at 1 a.m. The fact I could have died that night over something so trivial is horrifying. My close friend Carter and I were on a road trip, heading to a reunion with college buddies. It was a 15-hour drive, a marathon we figured we could conquer in one shot by trading off. I took the first shift, and 4 hours later, Carter was behind the wheel. The idea was for me to sleep, but I genuinely couldn't. Something kept me from getting comfortable, so when my turn to drive rolled around again, I was exhausted, maybe even more than before. I could still keep my eyes on the road, but my focus had lapsed enough that I never saw the fuel gauge plummet. We were in Carter's old Chevy, a relic without the modern alerts for a low tank. There was just a needle I'd neglected to watch. I only realized my mistake when the engine began to sputter. We had nothing left. Carter awoke instantly, his phone out, searching for the nearest gas station. Less than a minute later, the car lost all acceleration, and I had to coast onto the shoulder. I felt like an idiot. Making it worse, Carter announced the closest station was 4 miles away. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by flat plains under an empty sky. After debating our options, Carter resolved to walk to the station for a canister of fuel while I guarded the vehicle. It felt better than a $200 call for help over a walkable distance. Though it was 1 good OM, and Carter seemed unfazed as he set off down the dark road, vanishing from sight within a minute. I sat there, stewing in my own foolishness for causing this. But just a few minutes later, a set of headlights appeared up the road. They approached and passed, but at a crawl, maybe 15 or 20 at my nomche, in a 60-mile zone. I tracked them in the side mirror as they slowed even more, then stopped and executed a 3-point turn. They were coming back. I didn't want to signal I needed help. I didn't have to. They passed again. This time at a glacial 5 mixed imshu, their occupants likely staring right at me before they finally sped up and continued on their original path. What was that? My eyes were glued to the road, a bad feeling churning in my gut. Instinct told me something was about to go terribly wrong. I pulled out my phone and dialed Carter, hoping to warn him, but the call went straight to voicemail. He didn't answer. That sparked real worry, but I reasoned he might have silent mode on or lost signal. I waited a moment, then redialed. Nothing. My rationality was gone. I decided to abandon the car and find Carter. He'd only been gone 10, maybe 15 minutes. If he was still walking, I could jog and reach him quickly. I locked the car and started running along the shoulder. The silence was profound, so complete that when I paused, a ringing filled my ears. I jogged for 15 minutes straight, convinced I should have overtaken him by then. I pulled out my phone to call him one last time, and then I heard it, a faint, tinny ringing from somewhere off the road. I scanned the darkness beyond the shoulder and saw it, the faint glow of a phone screen in the grass. My muscles went rigid. Carter. I yelled his name. He didn't answer. I could see nothing but that dim light. I took a few steps into the tall grass, calling his name again. This time, a response. I heard Carter's voice muffled from near the phone. I moved closer. Carter yelled again, and now I could make out the words, "Get down." I still couldn't see him, but I dropped into the grass just as I saw a car approaching. It was the same one, moving slowly, its lights sweeping the area. They were hunting for us. After 3 or 4 passes, they finally moved on. We got up and sprinted to the gas station. Carter explained the driver had initially offered him a ride, radiating a creepy vibe and barely concealing his bad intentions. When Carter refused, the man got out, and Carter bolted into the fields to hide. His phone must have fallen out then, but he was too terrified to move. We got help at the station and reported the man and his car to the police, but they never located him. It was a horrifyingly close call, and I still feel a deep guilt for creating the situation. One thing is certain, I will never ever let the gas tank run low again. This happened back in 2014. I wasn't a road trip person, as taking that much time off work was rarely an option. But I found myself between jobs right when my family was planning a surprise 50th birthday party for my dad. Gas was much cheaper then, and flying was comparatively expensive. So, to save cash, and because I had the time, I chose to drive. I split the journey into a 3-day trip. After a full day on the road, I checked into the first motel I saw for the night. It wasn't fancy, but that didn't bother me. I slept in late, then packed my things. When I opened my door to leave, a man was standing directly in my way, startling me. "Excuse me," I said, trying to maneuver past him, but he barely budged. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with deep bags under his eyes and an unkind expression. As I loaded my car, he just stood there by my former room, creepily watching me. I was glad to be leaving. I checked out and got back on the highway. This was my longest leg of the journey. I aimed for at least 10 hours of driving. The first part was fine, mostly through populated areas. But about 6 hours in, the cities gave way to rural landscapes and long, empty stretches of road. Realizing that towns were becoming scarce, I decided to fill up at the next available gas station. I paid, started the pump, and went inside for a coffee. As I walked back to my car, I noticed another vehicle had pulled up extremely close behind mine. It was an old, deep red Corolla, and from my angle, its bumper seemed to be touching my car's rear. No one was outside pumping gas. The windshield was so heavily tinted I couldn't see inside at all, yet I felt a powerful, unsettling sense of being watched. I finished fueling, got in my car, and pulled away. Almost immediately, the Corolla left the station too, having never gotten gas, and merged onto the highway right behind me. I hoped it was a coincidence and tried to focus on my drive. I could see them for a while, a few cars back, but after sunset, the headlights behind me all blurred into one cluster. As the night wore on, traffic thinned out. I drove for 4 more hours without seeing the car again, and had nearly forgotten about it. My main challenge now was staying awake. My coffee, long gone. The next big city was 2 hours away, and I was determined to make it there for a nicer hotel. I figured another coffee might help, not for the caffeine, but for the simple distraction of sipping it. I took the next exit for a gas station. I immediately saw the convenience store was closed. It was a disappointment, but I still needed to top off my tank, so I pulled up to a pump. As I started fueling, a single pair of headlights exited the empty highway and descended the ramp. The place was already eerie, a dark, isolated station with nothing around it. My heart rate spiked when I recognized the approaching car as the deep red Corolla. The chilling thought that I was being followed became impossible to ignore. I rushed to hang up the nozzle, but the Corolla sped into the lot, not stopping at a pump, but pulling right alongside my driver's side door. I barely managed to get inside before their passenger door swung open. A man got out and immediately ran to my door, yanking on the handle. It took only a fraction of a second to recognize him. It was the man from the motel. His unnerving eyes sent a shock of cold through me. I started the car. When he found the door locked, he stopped pulling. I glanced at him as I sped off, expecting to see frustration. Instead, I saw something far more disturbing. He was grinning, a wide, ear-to-ear smile, as if this was some kind of game. A total psychopath. I floored it onto the highway and didn't ease up until I reached the city. I'm almost certain I wasn't followed that time. What terrifies me is that he emerged from the passenger seat. Someone else was driving, complicit in whatever sick plan he had. They had trailed me for over 10 hours from that motel. Even worse, they could have been following me the day before, and I never would have known. A decade later, that road trip is still hard to forget. And so, those stories come to an end, leaving a few questions to haunt you. How many times has a potential threat passed you by on the road, and you dismissed it as mere coincidence? Share your thoughts and your own unsettling road trip encounters in the comments below. We read all of them. See you in the next one.